And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Monday, April 14th, 2025. And starting out with the state of the sea ice on this Monday afternoon, we do have the pack ice down here between Nunavik Island and St. Paul. And there is the potential for some of this ice to drift further southward as we go through the midweek period due to the fact we have another strong storm that's going to be lifting out of the North Pacific and briefly pulling across the central Alaska Peninsula before it starts to weaken and then works its way eastward up into the Gulf for the latter half of the week. But we are, though, starting to see some openings in the ice here along the YK coastline, as well as up here east of Golovin and west of Shaktoolik, up there in the northeast corner of Norton Sound. And we're getting into the season where at least trying to melt off a bit. But looking at what we have coming up, we've already had one system. This is what's left of the storm that impacted the same area this past end of the week and weekend. This low, though, did have some flashes of lightning with it late Monday night into this Tuesday morning as it worked its way eastward across the northern Gulf Coast. That low by early pre-dawn Tuesday morning will be southeast of Yakutat and outside of the icy strait in the process of weakening. But this is the main weather player coming up that's going to impact much of the state during the week ahead. So the low center will bottom out just above 970 millibars. But it's a strong low, it has a broad circulation, and it has a lot of moisture around it. As a result, there are winter storm warnings for the eastern Aleutians for heavy wet snow with winds gusting 50 knots or so. You're going to have near blizzard or blizzard conditions at times, and this winter storm warning is in effect for Tuesday into early Thursday morning. There's a winter weather advisory for the southern portion of the peninsula, including False Pass, Sand Point, Cold Bay. Pick up a period of wet, sloppy snow Tuesday before it transitions over to rain. So warmer air. This is going to be a warmer system than what we've seen the past couple of weeks. And still a few lingering snow showers across areas of the interior and back toward the Panhandle. As we go into Wednesday, that low pulls up across the Alaska Peninsula. It's occluding. As this frontal system lifts north, it's going to tighten the gradient. There'll be some strong winds here across the Gulf Coast, especially western northern areas of the Gulf Coast. And still generally drier weather should prevail back toward the Panhandle at least Wednesday. Southern areas milder, but most active weather continuing here. Eastern Aleutians picking up heavy wet snow. Then areas along the YK deltas could pick up moderate to heavy snow with either blizzard or near blizzard conditions as this front lifts north and forces that moisture up across the interior. And this moisture is going to work its way all the way north across the Brooks Range and North Slope, and then eventually be along the Arctic coast from Point Hope and Cape Lisburne all the way eastward toward Kaktovik and Demarcation Bay. And that would be Thursday into Friday. And you got that moisture running up against the strong polar easterlies. There will be considerable blowing, drifting snow along the Arctic coast later this week. That's why there is a winter storm watch there. So coming back down to the southeast on Tuesday, southeast winds 15-20 knots, inner channels of the Panhandle, waves generally 2 to maybe 4 feet, 6 feet here. You get outside of Metlakatla down toward Dixon Entrance. The outer coast winds will generally be southwesterly off of Craig, Sitka, outside of Gustavus at 15 to 20 knots, waves 12 to 13 feet. Those winds will try to turn back west around Cape Suckling. And then on Wednesday, with that frontal system off to the southwest pulling up through the western Gulf, we're going to see southeast winds continue, inner channels, waves running 2 to 3 feet. Outer coast, though, southwest or southeast winds generally 20-25 knots south of Gustavus off of Craig, but notice 40-knot gales developing, especially outside of Yakutat Bay toward Cape Suckling. They'll be even stronger here in that area outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and over toward Kayak Island. So here in the northwestern Gulf on Tuesday, we're looking at just light variable winds, 10 knots outside of Hinchinbrook entrance. In Prince William Sound, southeast winds 10 knots, waves maybe a couple of feet. And Cook Inlet, take a snapshot of that, that's not going to last. Southwest winds 15 knots, upper middle Cook Inlet, variable winds around 10 knots, 3-4 foot waves outside of, as you get down toward the entrance there of Cook Inlet. But then Wednesday, as that frontal system begins to pull up from the south and west, we're looking at gale force winds developing all along the northern and northwestern Gulf Coast. 45 knot east-southeast winds outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, waves 15 feet. 35 knot gales within Prince William Sound, waves as high as 9 feet. Northeast winds upper Cook Inlet 25 knots, but by the time we drop down into lower Cook Inlet at Kennedy entrance, we're looking at east-southeast 40-knot gales with waves 10 to 14 feet there northeast of Kodiak Island. Across Kodiak Island on Tuesday, generally south winds 25 knots, but as we trail out down along the Alaska Peninsula, those winds are going to become more northeasterly in advance of that strong low coming up out of the North Pacific. So given the low pressure circulation, we're expecting northeast winds of 30 to 35 knots on Tuesday, plus you're going to be dealing with that mix of wet snow changing to rain and then heavy snow that'll be falling over the far eastern Aleutians. From Wednesday, the low will actually be up here in the vicinity around Sandpoint, Cold Bay. So you can see that circulation clearly. East-southeast winds 30 knots around Kodiak Island, 35 knot gales, southeast gales there off of Chiknik. But on the backside, north-northwest gales, 35 to 40 knots there, Cold Bay and False Pass. And you'll really see it on across the eastern Aleutians where that winter storm warning for heavy snow and strong winds. We have northerly gales on Tuesday, 35 to 40 knots, Nikolsky through Unalaska Dutch Harbor. As we go further west, those winds become northwesterly, 25 knots west of Adak. And then on Wednesday, this is when that storm will be in full force. You have moderate to heavy snow falling with winds of 40 to 45 knot northwesterly gales, waves running in excess of 20 feet, so high seas out there, especially on the Bering side of the eastern Aleutians. Further west, winds go to the west 15 to 20 knots west of Adak and then come back around to the south around 20 to 25 knots, Kiska to Shemya. Bristol Bay will see southeast winds on Tuesday, 25 knots, but northwest winds here in Kuskokwim Bay around 10 knots. North winds 25 knots, the Pribilovs, those will be increasing. And then along the lower Yukon coast and into Norton Sound, north-northwest winds 10 to 15 knots. For Wednesday, those winds increase northwesterly gales to 40 knots across the Pribilovs with waves building upwards of 14 feet. We have east wind to 30 knots within Bristol Bay, northeast wind 30 knots out of Kuskokwim Bay. And along the lower Yukon Delta, we're looking at north winds at 25 knots with northeasterly winds in Norton Sound at 15 knots. Through the Bering Strait, winds will be north-northwest, only 5 to 10 knots along the west side of the Seward Peninsula and north side of St. Lawrence Island. Lower Chukchi, kind of a mixed bag of winds. Generally offshore once you get up north of Cape Lisburn, east winds 15 knots, northeast winds 15 knots, Utqiagvik, northeast, generally a northerly component to the wind, Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik. This is still the day before the stronger winds arrive on Thursday with the snow. So Wednesday's looking across the Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 10 to 15 knots, Kaktovik to Utqiagvik. Down through the lower Chukchi Sea, northeast winds around 10 knots. Through the Bering Strait, winds will be northerly 15 to 20 knots along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, as well as over to the north side of St. Lawrence at Gamble and Savunga. But as that moisture creeps northward from the storm that's come up into the Alaska Peninsula, that moisture is going to ride over the Brooks Range and then be right along the Arctic coast Thursday into Friday with increasing winds along here. So we do expect deteriorating conditions. So be aware Thursday into Friday. Rough conditions. There could be blizzard to near blizzard conditions along the Arctic coast from Point Hope all the way east through Kaktovik and Demarcation Bay.